Welcome to today's deep dive. We've got a really compelling topic queued up for you today.
Yeah, we do. And it's one specifically tailored for the way you consume information.
Exactly. Because if you're someone who appreciates those profound paradigm-shifting insights, the kind that completely change how you view the cultural landscape around you,
You're going to find a lot of value in this discussion.
you really will.
Yeah.
Our mission today is to explore the material from this fascinating analytical framework. It's titled Lalita and the Distortion of Symbols.
It's an incredible text.
It really is. And we're going to use it to trace the long, wild journey of a single name and its associated archetype.
Right. It's a historical and psychological look at how a symbol that originally represented mature divine sovereignty underwent this massive shift.
And ultimately became a globally recognized shorthand for modern exploitation. It's this incredible intersection of linguistics, psychology, and cultural history.
And right at the top, I just want to clarify our angle for you today. We are completely bypassing the sensationalism that usually surrounds this specific modern word.
Yeah, no scandal today.
None. We are taking a highly nuanced philosophical look at how a culture's collective level of maturity dictates its interpretation of symbols.
This goes way beyond the history of a single piece of vocabulary.
Way beyond it. It's a study of what happens when a culture's collective consciousness fragments and how the symbols we mass produce act as a mirror.
Reflecting our own psychological state back at us.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because to truly understand the sheer magnitude of this cultural shift, we really have to start with the original blueprint.
We do. We have to go way back.
Long before modern pop culture, before literature got its hands on the phonetic sounds, the root of the name at the center of the study, Lalita, had a highly specific and revered meaning.
A deeply revered meaning.
Right. In Sanskrit, Lalita translates to concepts like playful, graceful, and divine ease.
Divine ease.
Yeah, just that phrase, divine ease, it paints such a distinct picture, doesn't it?
It really does. It implies this effortless, grounded power.
And anchoring that concept is the Hindu goddess archetype, Lalita Tripura Sundari.
Right. And when you look at her original symbolic meaning, the associations are entirely rooted in cosmic intelligence.
Yes.
She represents beauty, certainly, but that beauty is inextricably bound to sovereignty, to sacred feminine power, and profound spiritual refinement.
So it's not just surface-level aesthetics.
Not at all. The overarching theme is divine consciousness expressing itself in a perfectly graceful form. There's an inherent wholeness to the archetype.
Which makes it so critical to highlight what the original Lalita is not.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because given where this word eventually lands in the modern zeitgeist, it's so easy to retroactively apply our current biases.
Right, you hear the phonetic sound and you automatically make assumptions.
Exactly. But historically, she is absolutely not a child archetype.
No.
She doesn't represent naive innocence, and her power is described in the text as deeply subtle.
Yes, there is zero element of domination there.
And there is certainly no aspect of manipulation.
In her original tradition, Lalita embodies a flawless integration of wisdom and beauty.
They aren't competing traits.
Right, they actually fuel each other. She is defined as mature, radiant, and entirely self-contained.
Meaning she requires no external validation to exist.
Precisely. And when we look at the translation of the word playful, we really have to reframe our modern Western understanding of what play actually implies in this specific historical context.
Because our modern default for the word playful immediately skews toward youth or childhood.
Right, we think of a kid in a sandbox.
Exactly. But the original concept here is Leela, which is divine play. It's a completely different frequency.
It really is.
Think of the difference between a child banging on a toy piano and a master jazz musician improvising on stage.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
They are both technically playing, but the master musician is operating from a place of immense skill, maturity, and flow.
That really is the perfect way to put it. Leela refers to the universe unfolding through conscious creative force. Creation happens not out of a desperate struggle or a need to fill a void,
Right.
but out of an effortless divine joy. It is the playful expression of a fully integrated sovereign consciousness, creating simply to experience the grace of creation.
It's vast.
Vast, highly intelligent, and entirely self-aware. The playfulness comes from mastery, not from ignorance of the rules.
So you have this vivid image of a radiant, self-contained, mature power creating with divine ease.
Yes.
But language is incredibly fluid. As words migrate across borders and centuries, their meanings can morph.
And they often do.
And in the 20th century, this word migrated into Western phonetics. The syllables shifted just slightly. Lalita morphed into Lalita.
A very slight alteration of
Just
vowel.
a slight alteration. But the cultural shift that followed essentially leveled the original archetype.
The catalyst for that massive pivot was a very specific intervention by 20th century literature.
Right.
Vladimir Nabokov's 1955 novel, Lolita, effectively captured that phonetic sound and overrode its cultural DNA in the West.
Completely overrode it.
With that single, highly influential piece of fiction, the meaning of the word profoundly shifted.
The novel took this phonetic variation and attached it to a completely different psychological framework. The word was no longer a title of cosmic intelligence.
Oh.
It became the nickname of a 12-year-old girl.
What's fascinating here is that the literary character at the center of Nabokov's novel was written as a tragic victim. She's viewed entirely through the lens of a predator's obsession and distorted perception.
Right. The narrator of that story, Humbert, is highly unreliable.
Highly unreliable and driven by disturbing compulsions. The character of Dolores Hayes, whom he nicknames Lolita, is viewed exclusively through his fractured, obsessive lens.
She has no sovereignty in the narrative.
None. She is entirely captive to his projection.
And the really tragic irony is what modern culture did with that narrative. The archetype inverted almost perfectly.
It's a complete inversion.
Instead of representing divine, feminine play and cosmic intelligence, the name became synonymous with the sexualization of youth.
Yes.
But it went even further than the book. Pop culture essentially stripped away the tragedy, ignored the horror of the narrator's actions, and just kept the aesthetic.
Just the aesthetic.
It became linked to manipulation narratives and the projection of immature desire.
The distortion accelerated rapidly beyond the novel. Over the subsequent decades, the term was heavily commercialized.
Yeah.
The fashion industry, pop music, cinema, they all took the concept and stylized it.
Like the iconic imagery that has no actual basis in the original text.
Exactly. Like the heart-shaped sunglasses from Stanley Kubrick's movie poster. That image alone became a global shorthand for a specific kind of fetishized innocence.
It's wild how far the language drifted.
It drifted so far from its moorings that the symbol became entirely detached from its origin. A name that was once deeply associated with mature, divine feminine play became irrevocably linked with themes of exploitation and objectification.
So you start with sovereignty and spiritual refinement, and you end up with a cultural trope used to sell perfume and fast fashion.
It's quite a descent.
How does a culture take a sacred symbol and degrade it so thoroughly? It feels like a massive societal blind spot.
Well, this is where we transition from a linguistic history lesson into a broader philosophical critique of how human beings interact with symbols.
Because the degradation of this specific word is really just a case study for a much larger pattern.
Yes, it's an illustration of what cultures inevitably do to archetypes when they lose touch with their foundational maturity.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the text provides a guiding philosophical framework that explains the life cycle of these symbols.
It's a very clear map.
It maps out 3 distinct stages that sacred archetypes, particularly feminine archetypes, often go through when they interact with an evolving culture.
Right.
Stage 1 is reverence, stage 2 is romanticization, and stage 3 is exploitation.
That 3-stage progression explains the mechanics of the degradation perfectly.
Let's break those down.
Sure. In the first stage, reverence, the symbol is deeply grounded in its spiritual and philosophical roots.
Like the original Sanskrit Lalita.
Exactly. It is respected as a representation of cosmic intelligence. The culture interacting with the symbol has the maturity to handle the depth of what it represents without trying to own it or diminish it.
But cultures change.
They do.
And they often lose connection to those deeper spiritual or philosophical groundings. Which brings us to stage 2, romanticization.
The surface level.
Right. This is where you start focusing heavily on the surface level. You obsess over the beauty or the aesthetic of the symbol, but you slowly let go of the wisdom and the discipline that actually grounds it.
It's like loving the idea of a wild animal because it's beautiful, but forgetting that it has its own autonomous, dangerous nature.
Exactly. And we see that all the time in modern culture, taking profound historical or spiritual concepts and reducing them to mere aesthetics.
Constantly. And when that spiritual grounding is finally lost completely, the symbol is hollowed out. It creates an empty space, a psychological void.
And there is a fundamental rule of human psychology at play here.
Yes. When a symbol loses its intrinsic meaning, external projection immediately fills the space.
It's automatic.
It is. This is how a culture arrives at the third stage, exploitation.
The framework provides two incredibly powerful maxims here that really lock this concept into place.
These are so important.
The first is power without reverence becomes consumption. And the second is beauty without maturity becomes objectification.
Those are heavy concepts.
They are, but they perfectly describe the mechanics of that void.
Let's look closely at that second maxim. Beauty without maturity becomes objectification. To truly appreciate beauty in a mature way requires recognizing the autonomy and the sovereignty of the beautiful thing.
You appreciate it for what it is.
Right. Immaturity, on the other hand, cannot just appreciate. It has to possess.
And it has to own it.
It has to own, control, and project its own desires onto the object. It reduces a complex sovereign entity down to a two-dimensional object whose only purpose is to satisfy the observer.
And that is the ultimate contrast between the two ends of this historical timeline.
It really is.
In the original historical context, Lalita represents conscious creative force. She is the creator, the sovereign, entirely self-possessed. But in our modern context, the variation Lalita was turned into a cultural projection screen.
A projection screen is the ideal way to visualize it.
Yeah.
The modern commercialized archetype has no inherent power or internal life of its own. It exists entirely as a blank canvas, waiting to receive whatever distorted, obsessive desires the culture wants to shine onto it.
And it becomes a projection screen specifically for immature desire.
Precisely.
The modern archetype isn't about the character's internal experience. It's about the viewer's experience of the character.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the argument here is about the nature of meaning itself.
Right.
The difference between the sovereign goddess and the modern exploited pop culture figure is not found in the phonetic shift of the syllables. The difference is entirely in the consciousness of the culture interacting with the word.
It's about us, not the word.
Yes. When a collective society is disconnected from psychological integration and maturity, the archetypes they elevate automatically invert.
The culture effectively acts as a funhouse mirror.
That's a great way to put it.
Because the collective consciousness is fragmented, it takes these profound, integrated concepts and twists them. Play, which used to mean cosmic mastery, degrades into literal childish immaturity.
Yes.
Beauty, which used to be intertwined with wisdom, degrades into mere objectification. Innocence is no longer a state of purity, it becomes fetishized.
The culture drags the high-level concepts down to the level of its own fragmented ego.
It's so telling.
It reveals a profound fragmentation in the modern cultural lens. The original archetype didn't suddenly become flawed. The blueprint of Lalita, the sovereignty, the divine ease, remains exactly what it always was.
It didn't change at all.
It didn't. The shift simply exposes the fact that modern culture, in many ways, lost the capacity to revere something without trying to consume it.
Which brings us to a really vital point about accountability.
Yes, this is crucial.
Symbols themselves are not responsible for their misuse. The word itself, the arrangement of vowels and consonants, is inherently neutral.
Completely neutral.
Humans are the ones responsible. The consciousness that a person applies to the symbol determines its entire meaning in that moment.
It's a lesson fundamentally about power and the human ego. When human desire remains immature, it operates from a place of lack. It feels empty, so it constantly seeks to consume.
It's a hungry ghost.
Exactly. It cannot help but distort whatever it touches, because it views everything in the world merely as a tool to satisfy its own cravings. When power lacks accountability and reverence, it inevitably consumes the very things it claims to find beautiful.
Power without reverence becomes consumption. It's such a sharp, clarifying lens to look through.
It really is.
You realize that the original Lalita is entirely about divine play rooted in deep sovereign awareness, while the distorted, commercialized narratives that followed in modern times are entirely about projection rooted in the hungry ego.
The contrast couldn't be starker. One is a state of being completely full and creating out of joy. The other is a state of being completely empty and consuming out of obsession.
So what does this all mean?
Well,
If you are listening to this, digesting this massive cultural and linguistic shift, how do you apply this to your daily life?
right.
The real practical takeaway here is that understanding this difference restores your personal clarity. It allows you to draw a hard, definitive line between two very different states of being.
Two entirely different paradigms.
On one side, you have integrated sovereignty, rooted in awareness, balance, and wisdom. And on the other side, you have imbalance, rooted in ego, projection, and immaturity.
And by internalizing that dichotomy, you realize that the symbols splashing across our screens, our billboards, and our literature, will always act as a mirror.
Always.
They're constantly reflecting the exact level of maturity of the culture that is producing and interpreting them. That is the coherent understanding we really want to highlight today.
It's not just about one word.
No, this isn't about pointing fingers at a specific controversial word. It is a clinical, profound study of how sacred concepts transform, and sometimes tragically degrade, when the collective consciousness fragments.
It is so empowering to look at the world through this lens.
It really changes your perspective.
Because as someone who seeks to be well-informed, who wants to cut through the noise and the sheer information overload of our modern environment, recognizing this pattern is an absolute superpower.
A total superpower.
It means you can look at modern media, high-fashion campaigns, or pop culture trends, and you can instantly spot the underlying mechanics.
You see right through it.
You can clearly see when a culture is actively revering a symbol of true integrated sovereignty and when it is merely interacting with a projection screen of its own societal immaturity. It completely changes the way you consume information and evaluate the media you engage with.
It shifts you from being a passive consumer of cultural symbols into an active, critical observer of collective consciousness. You stop just absorbing the aesthetic and start questioning the psychology behind it.
Exactly.
And this raises an important question, one that builds directly on the philosophical framework we've been unpacking today.
Let's hear it.
If our culture's level of maturity automatically shapes, and in some cases deeply distorts, the archetypes we consume today.
Well, what else are we missing?
Right. What other ancient sacred concepts are we currently misinterpreting through the fragmented lens of our modern ego? What other symbols have we hollowed out and turned into projection screens?
Wow.
And what profound wisdom might we finally unlock if we stepped back, stop projecting our own desires, and approach those concepts with reverence instead?
That is definitely a thought to chew on. What else are we looking at through that funhouse mirror without even realizing it?
It's a big question.
It really is. Thank you so much for joining us on this custom-tailored deep dive today. We hope this exploration provided exactly the kind of profound aha moments you tune in for. Keep analyzing the world, keep seeking clarity over the noise, and most importantly, keep questioning the symbols around you.